Okay, so it's Wednesday, the 14th of September. It's day 203. My name is Darren Gertis, and thank you for joining me. Thank you for being the kind of person that cares about what's going on in Ukraine. So, what I want to talk about is what life was like behind enemy lines, like behind the liberated territories, how we got there, and kind of the background, as well as like what's next. Okay, so stay throughout this whole thing. By the way, do me two favors. One, if you can join me on Friday at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, that's New York time, 1 p.m. I'm going to have a Q&A for anybody who wants to talk about anything related to Ukraine. Put that on your calendar. There'll be a Zoom link below. Just click on that Zoom link at 1 o'clock and we'll talk about anything. I'll answer any questions I can. Second, if you are watching this at any time, if it strikes you and you think like, hey, this is valuable, click the like. It helps YouTube's algorithm kind of identify that this is a video worth watching, and I would appreciate it. Okay, let's keep moving. So I'm going to start here. This is yesterday, Zelensky talking about the only line I want to highlight is this. It's very important that together with our troops, with our flag, ordinary, normal life comes to the deoccupied territory. And that's the right tone to be setting right now. He needs to be working on trying to do that. This is the Institute for the Study of War talking about the Wagner Group. The Wagner Group financier, Zengeni Prigozhin, is being established as the face of the Russian special military operation in Ukraine. He gave a recruitment speech on September 14th, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment, introducing Stalinist method that allows the Kremlin to avoid ordering a general mobilization. This is like giving Putin what he wants, soldiers without having the special military operation. Now, if we look here, we'll see a little bit more about his speech. If you desert, we'll execute you, he says. So he's going to prisons saying, if you serve for 6 months, you're free. Only two other people can get you out of here, out of the prison, God or Allah, and they'll do that in a wooden coffin. I can get you out alive. Nobody goes back behind bars, he continues. If you serve 6 months in Wagner on the front lines in Ukraine, you are free. If you arrive in Ukraine and you decide it's not for you, we will execute you. Okay, so that's his promise. So they're going to jails to replenish. Now, why do they have to replenish? That's part of the story I'm trying to tell. Okay, so Russia's jacked up with both manpower and weapons because they're running out of both. So Russia's highly likely deployed Ukrainian uncrewed aerial vehicles, UAVs. This has the UK Ministry of Defense today. And they're also shopping around for equipment. Russia's almost certainly increasing sourcing weaponry from other heavily sanctioned states like Iran and North Korea because, again, they're running out of supplies. Now, what happened in the actual counteroffensive itself, it's pretty remarkable. Ukrainian troops outnumbered Russia's 8 times in the counterattack. So they knew what they were doing, massed their forces, had it ready, and really attacked. Now, I thought that it was just like scattered divisions or something. I rolled back the clock to 9-5 on the deep state map. So I rolled back the clock, and yeah, it's not just scattered like, you know, some Wagner here, and no, it's the first guards, it's the 20th guards. Now, if you see the name guards in a military unit, that's like elite status. It's like saying the Rangers or the SEALs or the Special Forces or whatever. And so, yeah, they were defended by, this area had some of the better battalions. 100 wrecked tanks in 100 hours. This article was absolutely fascinating. Counteroffensive starting on September 6th destroyed half the best tank division, 100 wrecked or captured tanks in 100 hours. The First Guards Tank Army. The First Guards had been one of the most prestigious of Russia's armies. In fact, they're supposed to be like the guardians of Moscow. Like that's a pretty significant thing. Ukrainian forces hail liberation of Izium, the swift fall of Izium. Kharkiv region has been seen as perhaps Moscow's worst defeat since the retreat from Kyiv. And here are some pictures about it. By the way, you don't regroup and leave these behind when you're regrouping. Okay, so that's just not how it's done. And so these pictures give kind of a real sense of what it was like in Izium and other occupied places. This is Reuters. Ukraine leader promises victory during frontline visit. So again, just like setting that tone in his speech was important, it was important for him to be actually getting out and visiting the front lines, as you see him doing here. Zelensky on Wednesday made a surprise visit to Izium, until 4 days ago, Russia's main bastion of logistics hub in the region. Why? Because Izium sits right on this strategic crossroads here. Okay, that's why it got captured. I remember watching the news when it was originally recaptured after the original pullback, and they started rolling down, because they were rolling down either this highway or this highway. I think it was the M3 highway. They were rolling right down and captured it, and I'm like, oh man, this is going to be bad, because they're going to be trying to encircle the Donbass, like close in on that region. Earlier on Wednesday, an emotional-looking Zelensky handed out medals to soldiers who freed the Baklya. That's 3,000 square miles of territory so far this month. That's the equivalent of 2 Rhode Islands back to back. Okay, I said the other day that they liberated, when it was 6,000 and change, that they liberated the equivalent of the state of Delaware. Now it's 2 states of Rhode Island. If you're an American, that makes sense. It's I think our smallest state, but still 2 of those is pretty impressive in about 5 days. Okay, so let's look at the deep state map. This is the deep state map. And again, this is where we were just a week ago. Notice that it's the 106 Guards. That's an elite. Guards is an elite title. The 1st Guards, Tank Panzer Army, the 20th Guards, all Army. So that's who's here. A week later, bam, look at that. And it's, again, the entire territory liberated was 2 sizes of Rhode Island in the United States. Okay, let's keep going. The Kremlin, which has made little mention of the setbacks in recent days, vowed to continue fighting. And it was funny because the Kremlin's been really weird. They've been either like dead quiet, or they would say crazy things, like incredibly crazy things like this. Like, Ukraine lost thousands of soldiers in the counteroffensive. 4,000 pro-Kyiv troops were killed in 5 days, they say. Really? In fact, I'm going to go through this and look at the comments in the very next video that I do, and look at the comments to show just how Russians are actually thinking about it, based on, like, the Carnegie Endowment for Peace shows that 70% of Russians are actually pro this special military operation. And it's partly because they're reading crap like this, that's saying that, you know, hey, this regrouping, they lost all kinds of troops and nothing bad happened to us. But bad things did happen. Okay, let's go on to the next article. In liberated Ukraine, towns, locals sob with relief, relating harrowing accounts. Just imagine what it would be like if you were occupied for 6 months. Maria Timvova said it was only when she saw Ukrainian soldiers that it hit her that over 6 months of Russian occupation had ended. Look, just you don't even have to hear what she's saying. Just look at what she's looking like here. I mean, it's tragic. I was walking away when I saw an armored personnel carrier coming into the square with the Ukrainian flag. My heart just tightened up and I began to sob, said the 43-year-old resident. Others were routinely shaken down, like, let's see where this was. She said Russian soldiers would stop residents in the street, take their phones, check them for pro-Ukrainian slogans, or to see if they were subscribed to pro-Ukrainian social media channels. At what point her husband was made to strip to his underwear in the street to make sure that he had no pro-Ukrainian tattoos and had not served in the Ukrainian army. Another guy, they found that his brother had a photograph of his brother in a military uniform in his apartment. So he's taken to the police station for 46 days. His captors at one point used wires to give him electrical shocks. And this is what it was like to live under this Russian occupation. And Zelensky said something really interesting. This was in the South China Morning Post. He said it's probably possible to temporarily occupy the territories of our state, but it's definitely impossible to occupy our people, the Ukrainian people. And what he means by that is this. Look, to occupy the country, you would need now, the Americans after World War II in occupying Europe had 1 soldier for every 40 Germans. And there's a study that says it's impossible to do this with an insurgency with less than 1 to 50. So let's use 1 to 40 as a ratio. That's what the Americans did. There's 44.13 million Ukrainians in 2020. Now, 12 million have fled the country. That leads us to 32 million. Okay, that leads us to 32 million divided by, or times 20%. That is essentially the fraction of Ukraine that's occupied. And it's not all the same. Like, it's more heavily occupied here and more here and less here, but about 20% of the country is occupied. Okay, so that leaves us with The number 1 to 140 ratio is going to be, they need 160,000 troops in order to actually occupy Ukraine. You can't do that. The estimates range how many Russians were killed, somewhere between what Moscow said early on of 1,300 to 43,000. That was in August 16th. And now that number has been updated to about 50,000 with a multiple of 2 for casualties. That's 150,000 by the Ukrainian count, north of 80,000 for the American count. They only started with 170,000, and so that's why they're having these replenishing problems, and Wagner is in there trying to motivate people to go to the front lines to be slaughtered. That's what's going on. You can't actually accomplish this. And if you were trying, you would need 800,000 troops in order to occupy all of Ukraine. So Putin's ambitions were nuts. But we know that his ambitions actually were nuts. Today in Reuters, Kremlin says Ukraine's NATO ambitions remain a threat to Russia. But it was never about NATO, and I'm going to show you why it was never about NATO. They wanted to occupy the territory and then do what they did in the occupied territory. The Kremlin said on Wednesday that Ukraine's ongoing ambitions to join the Western NATO military alliance presented a threat to Russia's security, highlighted the necessity for Russia to conduct what it calls a special military operation in Ukraine. Moscow was responding to the publication of a draft set of security guarantees by President Volodymyr Zelensky's office about joining NATO. Dmitry Peskov said the idea of Ukraine joining NATO was the main threat to Russia. Once again, it emphasizes the relevance and urgent need for us to ensure our own security and our own national interest. Okay, forget about Ukrainian interest, but that's what they say. Now, here's what actually happened. This is really important too. Okay, let me scroll back up to the top of this article. Exclusive. This is also September 14th. As the war began, Putin rejected a Ukraine peace deal recommended by an aide. Okay, Vladimir Putin's chief envoy on Ukraine told the Russian leader as the war began that he had struck a provisional deal with Kyiv that would satisfy Russia's demand that Ukraine stay out of NATO. Did you know that? Nobody heard this. But Putin rejected it and pressed ahead with his military campaign, according to 3 people close to the Russian leadership. The Ukrainian-born envoy told Putin that he believed that the deal had hammered out removed the need for Russia to pursue large-scale occupation of Ukraine. But they wanted the land. That's the thing. It wasn't about NATO all along. They're lying about it. But despite earlier backing in the negotiation, Putin made clear when presented with Kozak's deal that the concessions negotiated by his aide did not go far enough, and that he had expanded his objectives to include annexing swaths of Ukrainian territory, the sources said. The upshot was the deal was dropped. Now, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said, that has absolutely no relation to reality. No such thing ever happened. It is absolutely incorrect information. Well, Peskov lies all the time. In fact, if he said 2 + 2 is 4, I would still do the math before I believed him. That's how much he lies. Mikhailo Polodek, an advisor to the Ukrainian president, said, today we clearly understand that the Russian side has never been interested in a peaceful settlement. And that's right. They've not been interested in a peaceful settlement. What they wanted was something that looked like this map. They wanted to control this swath. They wanted the Donbass, and they wanted to have a land bridge down to Crimea. And if they could get more, and I think they wanted the whole of Ukraine, and that's why they attacked on all these different axes, I think they would have taken it. Okay, so that's what's going on there. Putin rejected the deal. Okay, European Commissioner said that Putin will fail. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says European Union must show resolve, not appeasement. A hard winter is coming, and everybody knows it unless they can conclude this sooner than later. As I stand here with the conviction, the courage, and solidarity, Putin will fail and Europe will prevail. In fact, I came to the conclusion yesterday, it's over for Russia. Short of an all-out military operation, Russia will lose. Europe's solidarity with Ukraine will remain unshakable. Okay, let's have some fun with Russian state media. Here's Chechnya's Kadyrov. I would have declared mobilization long ago and used any weapons. Now, this is what the Russians are reading. Pravda, RT, TASS. Let me calm down most ardent and skeptical commentators down. In the course of the special military operation, we do not retreat anywhere and nowhere. Okay, so this is a translation issue, I think. These are Western provocations and fakes. They don't retreat. This is not a retreat. This was actually a rout. That I mean, it was worse than what he was saying. Um, we cannot indiscriminately shoot everyone, including civilians, just to satisfy the manic desires of couch ignoramuses. In this special operation, Russia is trying to minimize human casualties. Isn't that so sweet of him? No, no, they're not. They're shooting at shopping malls, at kindergartens, at churches. I mean, they're blowing up rail stations when civilians are trying to get away. Our generals who graduated from military academies are well versed in the intricacies of military matters, and they let the enemy only do what is beneficial to us, right? Sure, that's not what's going on. But if you're Russian and you believe this, then you're going to be pro special military operation because you have no counterbalance. Here's another one, the EU, and this is a perennial favorite. It was basically the same form about a week ago, and it'll basically be out again, even though it's today's date. The EU is being prodded into selling itself into slavery on behalf of the Ukraine. This is Zakharova saying, a total commitment to supporting Kyiv regime would simply mean immolation for the EU, and this proposal is addressed to the nations that are debating how they can live through the winter. The EU began as a group of nations that banded together for mutual economic benefit through the deregulation of trade. Now they are being corralled together so their lives will become colder, poorer, and harder. And who's behind it? Dun, dun, dun. Washington. I mean, they say the same thing every time. This is Washington's diabolical plan to destroy what was previously called the common European space. Okay, now if you believe this kind of thing, then you start to become, and this is what I'm going to do in the very next episode, so just stay tuned. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and click that bell so that you know. I'm going to go through comments in the RT article. This RT article, in fact, Ukraine lost thousands of soldiers in the counteroffensive. They're claiming that 4,000 pro-Kyiv troops were killed in 5 days in Ukraine. 5 days, right? That would mean 800 a day while they were retreating. That's the beauty of this. And I'm going to go through the comments of the article just to show you and try to give you some insight into how the Russian people are actually thinking about the special military operation, which is really a war. Okay, thank you for your time. Thank you for caring about what's going on in Ukraine, and I'll talk to you again very shortly.